Good evening. Today is Thursday, November 21st, 2019, and I'll call this Fairfield City School District Regular Board of Education meeting to order. Mrs. Lane, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Begley?
Here.
Mr. Birding?
Present.
Mrs. Gundrum?
Here.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Here.
Mrs. Shorter?
Here.
Would you please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on the agenda is presentations and resolutions. Mr. Smith?
Thank you. Mr. Birdie, members of the board, we do have 3 presentations scheduled this evening. Our first is a senior high school spotlight. This time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bill Rice.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here tonight. We're excited to showcase some really awesome students that I'm super excited for you to meet here in a second. We're also going to touch on some wonderful business and community partners as well. Tonight we're going to get to showcase these students who participate in the Transition to Work program, or what we sometimes refer to as the Work Study program. Not able to be with us here tonight is Mr. Eric Flagg. Mr. Eric Flagg coordinates the partnerships and spends a lot of his time teaching and working with students, teaching them work and transition and life skills. He's unable to be here with us tonight because he's coaching his daughter's middle school basketball game. But we are excited to have one of our staff members here tonight, Miss Judy Falcone. Ms. Falcone works closely with Mr. Flagg and many of these students to teach these transition and life skills. Ms. Falcone is going to take us through a PowerPoint here in a minute that will highlight some of these partnerships and be able to speak additionally about some partnerships that we're exploring for the very near future. But the real reason why I'm excited to be here tonight is to showcase 3 of our students who have either been through our program or are currently working through our program. I'm excited to present them here to you tonight so you can see some of their presentation skills, which are a big part of what we're teaching them in this transition programs. Things like making eye contact, things like being able to speak in public, which may come easy to some of us, are challenges for some of these guys, but they're doing such an awesome job, and we're super excited to show them off tonight. It's not easy for them to be here tonight. These students have some hidden talents that will be on display. They're on display daily in the community and in the school in the work that they do, and I think you're going to enjoy seeing them here tonight present. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Judy Falcone and some of her students.
I've had the opportunity to work in Fairfield with students with disabilities for 22 years. It's a wonderful school to work for, and the students that I've brought here tonight, I've had the opportunity to work with them for a few years now, and they're wonderful, wonderful students. I'm here to talk about the secondary transition and workforce development for students with disabilities. When we have students that are on IEPs, it is mandate, federal and state requirement, that we serve our students with disabilities until they're age 21 years of age. So some of our students that don't go on to different programs if they meet all the requirements, they don't go on to different programs. We still work with them at the high school. And some of the kids are labeled 23s because they have met all their academic requirements, but we still need to work on some work study tasks. So in Ohio, students with disabilities ages 14 or younger, if appropriate, formally enter into the secondary transition planning process. A truly successful transition process is a result of a comprehensive planning that is driven by the student's preferences, interests, needs, and strengths. And we do have to address those on the IEP. The comprehensive planning moves students towards successful future outcomes in competitive, integrated employment, education, and independent living. State law allows for students to stay in school until the day before their 22nd birthday to work on transition skills. There are 5 pathways to employment after high school. There are students can choose from military, 2-year college, 4-year college, training and technical school, or straight to work. The taxonomy for a transition program is program structures, student focus planning, family engagement, interagency collaboration, and student development. We collaborate with agencies as early as age 16, 17, and sometimes earlier because Butler County Department of Developmental Disabilities gets involved with some of our students at that age. And we start working on transition planning at that time. Then, as they get older, we start to bring in other agencies through Job and Family Services, like Ohio Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, which is called OOD. And then we also talk to individuals from Butler Tech, Project Life, and Project Search, to see if the students are geared to that, if they're interested or going into those sort of programs, and if they're appropriate for those programs. Our work-study program starts at age 14 plus. There are classroom transition activities that we teach within the classroom, job exploration class. So some of the students are involved in what's called job exploration. They go out in the community. They either work in the school or they go out in the community. So we're constantly creating jobs for our students. There's community work study, transition programs, and employment. So there's student-centered individualized planning on the IEP. We have to conduct age-appropriate transition assessments regarding post-secondary goals. We have to focus on their preference, their interests, their needs, and their strengths. And right on the IEP, there is a place for transition goals. An example of training employment goal, the intervention specialist will guide a student in comparing college majors, but then we go into an intervention specialist will provide students the chance to job shadow or fill out an application, or instruct students on community safety or travel training. So those are just examples. So our job exploration class, they learn job-related skills, developing work ethic, learning to work with others, life skills, preparing for the future, and learning work preferences. In addition, career pathways is required for all FHS students. So sometimes our students will go to an adaptive career pathways class or a typical career pathways class, but it's required for all of our students, and all of those things are addressed in that class. So at this point, we also figure out what they like and dislike, so we do a lot of assessments to figure that out. So Joe, right here, is one of my students that I work with at the high school, and he's a 23. Joseph?
Yeah.
Could you come up? So I've been working with Joe for quite a few years, and he is really now at this point spending most of his time working. He's learning a lot of skills working in the bookstore. He works, he serves coffee and tea. He's worked at we've had a coffee shop for a little while. He does money exchange, he does inventory, a lot of math skills that he's learning, which is great, hands-on, real-life world experiences. And those are the things that they really learn from, being able to do those things in real world. So recently, Joe has taken on a new job, and would you like to put this on, show everybody? So Joe's taken on a new job, and that's a coffee service. So since he delivers tea and he does other kinds of services for the teachers in the building, he came up with an idea for his can you show everyone what's on your apron? Here, come on out. Stand out here. This is the name of his business, Joe's Quality Services.
love it.
He provides a lot of services to our school. Wonderful. So can you talk about? So Joseph, can you just talk a little bit about what you do and what you like to do the most?
Hello. I like to do. I like when we deliver the tea.
And who do you deliver tea to?
Mrs. Sabbath and Dr. Salyers.
What does Dr. Sawyer's like in her tea?
She likes milk. Yep.
So you did a great job, Joe. Is there anything else that we should ask him? Are you done? Would you like to say anything else?
Okay.
What would you like to say?
I also copy paper.
You started the copy service. He also goes to UC, right? You go to UC and learn something, new things there, and go to Mercy. He goes to Mercy Hospital. We have partnerships with Mercy Hospital. What do you do at Mercy Hospital?
Well, I clean out the dishes.
Does a fantastic job. Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. So Joe has met all his academic requirements, and he's doing a fantastic job. And even before they meet the academic requirements, like I said, we do start students off in their job exploration classes. So he was explaining the community work study that we partner with Mercy Hospital, J.C. Penney, Donato's, Shared Harvest, Scholastic Books, Walgreens, Butler Tech, Bird's Restaurant, State Farm, Fairfield Greens, and the latest one is Procter & Gamble's Transition Program and Project Search. Butler Tech has transition programs to apply to, but we will service those that do not get in. We will continue to service those that do not get in. So, Austin, can you come on up? So Austin is a student who went through a school program and completed his academic requirements, but then he went on to go to Project Life. Students do not get their diplomas. The diplomas are deferred until they're completed with their programs at Project Life and Project Search. So, let's see, I have some questions to ask you. Where is your current internship, Austin?
My internship.
Talking to me, not too close.
My current internship is the Wassery.
Russell, what are your jobs there?
Last year, I worked at the YMCA, but for Wirings and TJ Maxx. And this year, I'm working now. I'm working budget DRL.
Where do you want to work when you're done with your internship?
After Project Tier 1, and I'm going to go to Project Source.
You're going to go on to Project Search after Project Life, right?
Yes.
Okay. What have you learned on the job?
Yeah, I want something new, like being in the middle of Harvey and people walking, where could watch your surroundings.
Watch your surroundings?
Yes.
Very good.
So I just want something new because you need to say walk for one of a Harvey, one side of a Harvey.
That's right. That's right. And Austin also worked at TJ Maxx during the summer, didn't you?
No.
Oh, in the spring, okay. And they really love him there, and they've actually offered him a job there when he gets done,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
He's done a great job, Austin. This is Austin Furter. Thank you. And then this is some data that is collected at Butler Tech when they're working. And then the final outcome for our students would be to get a job once they've completed a Project Life or Project Search program, or they have completed they've stayed here until their 22nd birthday. So then we work with some of those agencies, DD, OOD, to get them into employment. And sometimes they continue to utilize job coaches in their employment. So the last individual I'd like to call up is Nathan Strother, who is Joe's older brother.
Hello, my name is Nathan Scholler. I went to Fairfield High School, and after that I went to Project Life and Search. At Project Search, I learned different jobs by going to different sites. After Project Search, I got a job in the community at a nursing home called Maple Knoll, and another at Jupiter Coffee and Donuts. At Maple Knoll, I clean dishes and sort silverware. At Jupiter Donuts, I greet customers, fold boxes, and clean dishes. My favorite part about Jupiter Donuts is interacting with customers. I am very proud of getting this job all by myself.
Nathan is an example of what the positive outcomes that we can we achieve through, or we help them achieve through our what we teach. And finally, there's a Positive Attitude Award that's given through the work-study program, and this is to honor Mason Blanchard. Mason showed up to work, study every day with a smile on his face and a good attitude, even though he was going through the unimaginable. To honor that spirit, we will be giving out this award annually. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
So I would just like to, as building principal, publicly thank all of our parents and our students. Excellent job tonight. And Ms. Falcone and Mr. Flagg, who couldn't be here, do tremendous work with these students. It was awesome seeing you guys present tonight. So good job, guys.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
It's just awesome.
Well, I just want to thank our staff for the work that they do with every child in our district. I know that my former brother-in-law went through this program back in the 90s, and more recently, a former board member, Dan Murray, had a son, Thomas, that went through this program. So thank you very much for what you do. And Joe and Nathan and Austin, tremendous job tonight. It's not easy getting in front of a group of people you don't know, and we feel you did a wonderful job, and we're very proud of all of you. So thank you very much. And before we move on to our next presentation, if you would like to stay around, you can. Families, if you'd like to leave, this would be an opportune time for you to go and not have to. We have a very lengthy meeting tonight, so feel free if you want to head out now. Feel free to do it at this time. Thank you very much for coming. Okay, Mr. Smith, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Mr. Birdie, members of the board, our second presentation is Mandy and Nancy and I will be doing a presentation on an EdChoice Scholarship Program. And inside your packets, you have 3 documents. Ed Choice Scholarship Program Fact Sheet, 2020-2021 criteria for Ed Choice designated public schools, and an Ed Choice Scholarship Program 2021 list of designated public schools. In a few minutes, we should have some copies here of the PowerPoint presentation that you can use to make notes on as we go through the presentation this evening. I do just want to make a statement before we jump in, is that the information that the three of us are presenting this evening, we believe it to be accurate as of November 21st. We've learned a lot, the three of us have learned a lot in the last few weeks, but different interpretations have emerged on several occasions. So I just, things could change, and to be quite honest with you, we are hopeful that things change in the near future. So we'll start out, what is the Ed Choice Scholarship Program? The program provides up to 60,000 state-funded scholarships to students who attend quote-unquote low-performing public school buildings, and that is the language from the fact sheet. Mandy will talk a little bit later about the definition or what the criteria is to be low-performing. The scholarship must be used to attend private schools that meet requirements for program participation. When will Ed Choice applications be accepted? So that window for applications opens on February 1 and ends April 30th, 2020. So that is right around the corner. There will be a second application period between July 1 and July 31. So who is eligible to apply for Ed Choice? Students that currently attend a designated public school in their resident district. There are schools from approximately around 400 of the public school districts in the state of Ohio, which means that roughly 75% of the public school districts in the state of Ohio have been impacted. That number has grown dramatically and is projected to continue to grow. So for example, our school district did not have any schools on the list for the current school year. However, we have 7 schools on the designated list for the 2021 school year. Those schools are North Elementary, East Elementary, Compass Elementary, Central Elementary, West Elementary. By the way, that is every elementary school except for South, Creekside Middle School, and our high school. So I'd like to talk a little bit, and you see up there on the PowerPoint the list of designated public schools, and I'll jump around a little bit this evening. But if you go to that list, I believe that's about 26 pages. That list is a list of all of the schools in the state of Ohio that are on that list for the 2021 school year. You will find our 7 schools on that list. I believe that every public school, or maybe not every, almost every, if not every public school district in Butler County has been impacted, some more so than others. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the impact on our district and what that means. So, and I'll talk, I'll jump around from, we're going to talk a little bit about incoming kindergartners, then we're going to talk about current K through 7 students, and then current 8 students that are in grades 8 through 11 right now. Inside those categories, we also have, we're going to talk about students that are in our schools right now and their eligibility compared to students that are not in our schools right now, and talk about their eligibility. So it is kind of confusing. We've been talking about it for a while now, so if I'm going too fast, feel free to stop me at any time. And Mandy and Nancy also feel free to stop me if I leave something out or I say something that's not quite right. So let's talk about incoming kindergartners for next school year, 2021. If they are zoned to attend our elementary students that are on the list, those students qualify for the Ed Choice Scholarship. and could receive that scholarship in the amount of $4,650 each student. EdChoice will pay either the scholarship amount or the private school's tuition amount, whichever is less. So this is one of two groups that we're really concerned about, and that we don't offer all-day kindergarten in this school district. So we have families that are zoned to attend one of those elementaries. Now, their students are eligible to apply for that scholarship, go somewhere else, have tuition paid, and Nancy will go into more detail, and I may not say it the right way, but basically those funds will be withdrawn or withheld from our school district, and they will go to that private school. Okay, so we're really concerned about incoming kindergartners. And I'm sure, and we'll be a little repetitive this evening. We spent a lot of time and preparing for this presentation. There are some unknowns. Trying to make projections is very difficult because we have no idea how many families might take advantage of that. But that particular group of students, we're very concerned about the impact on incoming kindergartners. So let's talk about students in grades K through 7. They're in kindergarten right now, all the way up to 7th grade. If they currently attend one of our schools on the list, they may apply for the EdChoice Scholarship when the window opens in February. So if they are currently enrolled here and in our schools. I also want to add, it's very common for those families to receive letters, phone calls, and emails from private schools making them aware of the opportunity or their eligibility for the EdChoice Scholarship. We've also been told that it's very common for almost all, if not all, of the applicants to be given the scholarship if they apply. We haven't experienced it yet, but from neighboring school districts, they've informed us that it's a very, very high rate of acceptance for those students that apply for EdChoice. Students that currently attend a private school and are in grades K through 7 are not eligible for the scholarship unless they enroll in our district prior to February 1. Okay, so again, if you are in our schools, you are eligible to apply. If you are in a private school setting in grades K through 7, you are not eligible to apply. There is some question, again, one of those unknowns about, technically a student could enroll in our school district prior to February 1 so that he or she would be eligible to apply. We don't see that happening. Again, we have no idea of knowing, but it would be hard to imagine that the numbers there would be very large because we just don't see families taking their children out of their current school for a small window of time. We believe that they have to be there until that window closes in April 30th. So it's impossible to predict, but we just don't see that happening. However, we have been told there is speculation that after the 2021 year that may change and that they may not have to be enrolled in order to be eligible. But that, again, remains to be seen. The next group of students I want to talk about, I've talked about incoming kindergartners being a concern to us. Students that currently attend, we're going to talk now about current 8th graders through 11th graders. Students that currently attend a private school and are in grades 8 through 11 are eligible for the scholarship, as they are not required to be enrolled in our district when that window opens on February 1st. The scholarship amount for grades 9 through 12 is $6,000 per student. So what that means is Jimmy is in a private school right now and is a freshman and does not intend to enroll in our district, has no intention, intends on completing graduation for the next 3 years at a private high school, but now Jimmy's now eligible to receive $6,000 in scholarship money for the next 3 years, and really has no intention, or had no intention of attending Fairfield High School. Students, and this is also different from the elementary piece, that's the difference. Students in grades 8 through 11 that currently attend our schools, that will be freshmen next year, or at our freshman school campus now, or sophomores or juniors at our high school, are also eligible to apply for the scholarship when the window opens on February 1. So that's the difference between grades current 8 through 11. Regardless of where the students are, every student is eligible. Now, when we were first notified about the program, we were told that 9 through 12 was the same as K through 7. But then we received an email on a Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. that wasn't accurate, that it had been misinterpreted. So that's a little bit of information about the EdChoice Scholarship Program. We've given you the amount, $4,650 for grades K through 8, $6,000 for grades 9 through 12. Nancy will talk a little bit, later on about the financial implications of that. A couple other clarifications I'd like to make. Once a student receives the EdChoice Scholarship, he or she will not lose it. That's what we've been told. For example, a kindergartner may receive the scholarship because an elementary school is on the list, but once he or she receives it, it will not be lost. So let's say grades 6, 7, and 8, and our middle school is not on the designated list, it doesn't matter. The student will still keep the scholarship. The student's elementary school may be on the list, middle school and high school may not be on the list, doesn't matter. They get to keep their scholarship K through 12. That's a cost of around approximately $65,000 over the course of K through 12. Mandy will also talk a little bit. I think she's reached out to the ODE about trying to figure out what it takes to get off the designated list. I don't know that we have an official response. We have heard some school officials say, estimate that it might take as many as 7 years to get off the list. And I think you'll be amazed at the criteria how a school gets on the list. But I'm not going to steal any of Mandy's thunder. Simply put, and again, there's lots more information to share this evening, but at the very end, we'll talk about what have we done up to this point, what we plan to do. I will say that this feels like the beginning of the end of public education if nothing changes. And I'll speak more to that at the end of the presentation. And I think that's all I have for now. And so at this time, I'll turn it over to Mandy.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. So one of my first questions, knowing that EdChoice had been around for several years, I wanted to know why now, what had changed here in the last year or so that resulted in so many more schools being on that designated list. So you might remember when Ohio decided to change its testing protocols, they also instituted at the same time something called Safe Harbor, and that was to protect both teachers and schools from any adverse effects of the testing changes. Well, now Safe Harbor has ended, and because the conditions to get you on the list require 2 consecutive years of underperforming on the state report card, we're seeing a greater number of schools now on that list because Safe Harbor has been over now for 2 years. So that's one thing. The other big change that is impacting a lot of schools, and Mr. Smith already talked about this, is simply the idea that high school students are no longer required to ever step foot in public school in order to apply for that scholarship. So both of those things I think are important to understanding, why this has such a great impact on our schools. So in order to find yourself on the list, you have to meet one of these 6 criteria. And you actually have a handout of this in your board packet, which might be a little bit easier to read than the slide up there. But what I did here is highlight the 2 categories that resulted in our schools being on the Ed Choice Scholarship list. So for both Creekside and the high school, they fell under the performance category, while all of our elementaries were on the list because of their performance in the K-3 literacy component. So earlier, Mr. Smith listed all of the Fairfield City schools that are on the list for next year for the 2020-2021 school year. And the next slide shows exactly why we ended up on that list. So like I mentioned earlier, all of our elementaries, with the exception of South, are on the list, and all of the elementaries are on the list as a result of receiving either a D or an F for 2 consecutive years on the state report card. So for Creekside Middle School and the senior high, it was their value added score as well as their overall grade on the report card that resulted in them being put on the designated list of schools. My other big question in all of this was, how do we get off of this list? And how quickly can we get off of this list? So, I read Ohio Revised Code. I wasn't exactly sure. So like Mr. Smith said, I did send an email to ODE asking them for clarification, a simplified version and some clarification around what we have to do in order to exit the list. Clearly we will have to at least have at least 1 year where we earn a C or better in K-3 literacy, or improve our value-added scores and overall report card grade significantly. So as soon as I hear back from them, I will share that information with you.
So as Billy mentioned earlier, it's very difficult to try and project how many students currently attend private schools, how many may attend those that are here now. So I have to be honest with you, this is a shot in the dark. I tried to use some of our transportation records of the students we transport to private schools. But if you're looking for next year's numbers, as of right now, we're estimating 605 students will be attending private schools. And you can see the breakdown that we use between K-8 and 9-12 students because of the difference in the amounts. And based on that number, we're estimated to lose almost $3.4 million next year. Could be high, could be low. At this point, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how many apply for that scholarship. And there are schools that we don't transport to that are on the list as being eligible for students to attend. So they may be in Cincinnati, but some of our resident students may attend those schools. So if we don't transport, I could be off 20 students. It's just hard. It's hard to estimate. We don't have any information that we can pull through our records, through this ODE's records. They have no state report card like we do that you may be able to get some numbers off of those. So that's our estimate for next year. The following year, if this still is in place, we're estimating it about a 5% increase that our students will go to private schools. So total students there is 635. We're over $3.5 million loss for that year. And it just continues. As I said, I increased it about 5% every year. You'll see the following year, 667 students, over $3.7 million for that year. The last year that is on the forecast for 23-24, we're at $3.9 million. So overall, for those 4 years, we're looking at $14.5 million that will be deducted from our state funding for private school students. those are the numbers I've used in the forecast, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And of course, that will be adjusted as time goes on and we get a better feel of how many of those students will be going to private schools. And Billy can attest, I've been back and forth, wearing out the carpet, probably back and forth to his office saying, am I looking at this right? Do you think I'm being too conservative? And honestly, we don't know. As we looked at more and more of the numbers, and it's just difficult to estimate. So next year, hopefully, will give us a better idea of where things will stand for the future.
All right, so back to next steps. So, our goal right now is to continue to educate ourselves. All three of us have been, collaborating with other superintendents, treasurers, state legislators, the Ohio Department of Education. We're going to continue to do that, educate ourselves. We want to educate our employees and educate our community as much as possible about this program. We spoke with our administrators Tuesday of this week, shared some information about this program. We've met with some of our union leadership. We have an additional meeting scheduled next week to have some more conversation. In the future, we'd like to create a fact sheet that we could publish about this scholarship program and the impact that it will have on our district and our students. We plan to include contact information for our elected officials on this fact sheet so that all stakeholders know how to contact them if they choose to do so, and we hope that they do. The message that I've been sharing as we've been talking to different groups of people is that if there was ever a time for folks to contact their elected officials and let them know how they feel about something, this is it. And this is, we have to be one voice, and it has to be a lot of voices, and it has to be consistent, and it can't be one communication. It needs to be constant, needs to be consistent, because I truly believe that public education, as we know it, is at stake, is on the line. We've talked already with numerous elected officials. I've also reached out to the Ohio Department of Education. I want to go back a little bit and talk about how this happened. It was an expansion. So this program's been in place, but it was expanded this summer, tied in with the budget, but there was no public discussion about it. No one was consulted. So groups did not have the opportunity to hear about it and provide feedback. It was described as being done at the 11th hour behind closed doors. So that's the message that goes along with, how this came to be in place. One thing I also want to point out, elected officials have acknowledged in our conversation, keep in mind all of this is based on a state report card. And one of the elected officials that we met with said, well, we know the state report card is flawed, and we're studying it. So, an argument for that was, well, if we know it's flawed, then why are we moving forward? Why are we moving forward with this program based on a system that we know is flawed? And then the other piece that I don't think people should forget is that, this is happening because of our state report card results. And now public funding is now going to a private institution that will not be held accountable in the same way. They do not have a state report card. So that just doesn't seem right. So again, we are going to continue to keep those lines of communication open with the ODE, with legislators, with staff members. I think Nancy and Mandy and I are going to try and make our way around each of our buildings in the very near future to educate folks on what's going on. But it's our hope that all people that believe in public education will take a stand and engage in the process. So, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have this evening.
Any questions from the board?
I do have a question. And it's for you, Nancy. I mean, when I first learned about this, when you guys informed us, it was definitely upsetting because I do agree with you, Mr. Smith. I think this has been, unfortunately, you could almost see the groundwork, you know, but I never thought there would be an overreach, and I do consider this an overreach. I do consider it to be one of those things that was done in the dark with very little accountability, in a way to get to achieve a goal without really paying a political price for it. And that's really kind of despicable. But my question for you is, for Mrs. Lane, I would like to have you just confirm, because we're going to go over the four-year forecast, but can you confirm the portion that's actually the state portion of our budget, the monies that we receive as state allocation, as opposed to our local property tax portion? Because it almost sounds like it's almost 10% of our state apportionment. That's what it sounds like, but I'm sure I'm wrong on that. I hope I'm wrong on that.
Let me look at something real quick.
While she's looking that up, I'll throw in one more fact for you. So when in talking with legislators, you know, they indicated this was not their intention, that the Ohio Department of Education misinterpreted it. However, if you go to the Ohio Revised Code, it's very clear. All of the criteria that Mandy talked about tonight is in Ohio Revised Code, which, you know, the Ohio Department of Education does not write. I did reach out to the Ohio Department of Education. They referred me to the Ohio Revised Code and also made the statement that if this is to be changed, it will have to be changed by the legislators. So that is, you know, again, just keep that in mind as we open our communications. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, and I want to make sure.
I was giving you time.
Thanks. Thank you. So based on our estimates for this year, yes, it's close to 10% of our state funding. Now, one item that came up in our discussion with some of our legislators that were at this meeting was, well, but you got extra money this year. Well, we received student wellness and success funds, and we'll talk about that too tonight, for $683,000.
Exactly.
I'd be willing to give that up if they would get rid of this ed choice piece, gladly. So that's an argument that they used. Another argument was, well, this isn't our problem. ODE is interpreting it incorrectly. They're implementing it incorrectly. So I felt like it's the blame game, again, and that didn't go over well, of course, with the group of superintendents and treasurers that attended the meeting. So it's very frustrating, especially when you don't have the information to try and calculate the actual loss to your district, for me. It's frustrating in other ways, but financially that frustrates because I have no idea whether I'm close to the estimated amount or I'm way off.
Well, yeah, to that point, I think it's almost impossible, through no fault of yours, it's almost impossible to estimate what the impact is.
Right.
The only criteria in this might be the enrollment capacity of the local private schools.
Correct.
Which will
we don't know what that
change
is.
because of supply and demand.
Yes, agreed. Agreed, Melina. It will change because of supply and demand. Absolutely.
And the students have to apply to the private schools first and be accepted before they can apply for the scholarships. Once they apply for the scholarships, then I believe we have access to that information to see how many of those students are actually trying to seek the scholarship. So I don't know how soon we would get that information. If it starts February 1, it depends on, probably on the approval process at the private schools. So I may not have an update for the May forecast, at least this year or next year for 20. So it's going to be interesting to see when we get the final numbers in.
I just ran a quick search on the ODE's website for what schools qualify in Butler County. And just for informational purposes, I have two that came up in Fairfield. Sacred Heart is not one of them. Cincinnati Christian is, yet is the important thing. Cincinnati Christian is, I believe they have some pretty rigorous application standards. There's a Fairfield Educational Building that I'm not familiar with.
They have kindergarten only.
Okay. And then there's St. Anne, St. Joseph, both in Hamilton. St. Anne's really not that far away. It might still affect us. Emmanuel Lutheran, I think, is on the west side of Hamilton. St. John the 23rd is in Middletown, and then, of course, there's Baden. My understanding is Baden's enrollment is pretty high right now. I'm not sure how many more students they could take. They had, I think, some of the largest incoming classes. So, I don't know how much more
Don't
room.
forget about your high schools in Cincinnati.
Oh, that's true, too.
Mulder,
I did not run a
Mulder,
search.
LaSalle, St.
I did
Ags.
not run a search to see if they are on there, but.
They are.
You know, obviously it's something to be concerned about, but I'm also not sure how willing people are going to be to travel that far. I mean,
We have to transport them still?
9th and 10th graders, yes.
And
11th
any elementary?
elementaries, if we transport to the places now, yes.
So it doesn't matter where they are, we'd have to transport them unless we find it.
Unless, like you see tonight on your agenda, payment in lieu of transportation, where
Right, we'll have to
we
pay
may not run a
them,
bus,
yeah.
but we will have to pay them $250 for transportation costs.
So they could go to an elementary school outside of Butler County
Mhm.
that's on the list.
Mhm.
And then we'd have to then pay them more money because they want to go there,
If it's within 30 minutes
30 minutes. Okay.
of their home school. So if they normally would attend West Elementary, it would have to be within 30 minutes of West Elementary for them to receive the $250.
And I'll just add just a couple of things, and, you know, again, our mission is to educate, and obviously, we're passionate about public education. You know, we don't want this to be about, you know, public versus private schools, so to speak. We have a good relationship with some of our local private schools, and that's not what this is about. It's about, you know, public funds going elsewhere. It's also about money being taken from our district and the impact that has on us. So, for example, I'd like to speak a little bit about schools that may not be on the list right now. We've been informed that it's a fairly simple process for schools to get onto that list. So I suspect that list will grow.
Excuse me, Mr. Smith, are you talking about schools that qualify
Right.
to receive the scholarships?
Yes,
Okay.
the private
All
schools.
right,
The
thank you.
list of private schools that are available for Ed Choice scholarship programs will continue to grow.
Okay, thank you.
The process, as Jerry talked about, you know, is rigorous, and that will continue to be the case. So private schools will get to pick and choose the students that will attend. That hasn't changed. I'm going to go back to, again, without naming without naming a private school. So an example, we've projected that, you know, private high school A currently has 214 of our students. And so those students automatically are eligible, and there's no reason that all 214 of them will not apply for that $6,000 scholarship.
Can I interrupt you? So that money, even though they are currently not going to our school, they're currently at a private school, we will still lose,
Yes.
forfeit.
$1.2 million would then go to that school, possibly.
Yes.
Got it.
That
And they
one
haven't
school.
been here, they have no intention of coming here. And all they have to do is apply, and that school is on the list. So that's a big number, and that's just one. That's probably the largest, but there are a lot out there. I will tell you that we talked, you know, Belina mentioned supply and demand and, you know, capacity, but some of our families have already received emails from private schools telling you are eligible for this scholarship. You do not have to attend, you know, one of the elementary schools in Fairfield. So recruiting is taking place already.
And a public records request happened to come in this week from an organization wanting all this information. And by law, we have to provide that to them. So they happen to do this every year anyway. The timing of it was just spectacular with our discussion about Ed Choice. It just was amazing. It came in at the same time.
And I think it's important to note, public schools don't close their doors to anyone. We take all students that show up at the doorstep, regardless of how much advanced preparation they've had, whatever the issues are, whatever the expenses are for any special needs. It's a compact with the public that we enter into, and we do our darndest to fulfill that compact. Private schools take who they want, as Mr. Smith said, and they don't have the same accountability measurements that we have. So with the state report card, our funding is up for grabs based on accountability measures that they feel that we haven't met, even though they know the system isn't perfect. So it's just amazing. I would urge people to definitely contact their representatives and look closely at what people stand for. Look at their agenda. Don't just look at the face value. You just have to dig deep and look at what people really stand for, and base your votes and actions on that.
Any more comments, questions?
Do we have any idea if the state is expecting to turn people away from this scholarship? Because I saw they give out 60,000, and I honestly have no idea how, what kind of turnout they're expecting for these.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, we came across, one of us came across some language this week that, yes, it says 60,000 now, but I believe if they get so close within, 10% of that, then it gets raised by 5%. So I think that's just a number that will continue to go up.
Okay.
Based on that, based on what we came across this week.
Right now, they're only giving out about half of those $60,000 or 60,000 scholarships.
And just to be more specific, to clarify the point I was trying to make earlier, is that some of the other schools have some very rigorous non-academic standards and hoops that people have to jump through, that I definitely think this is a problem for us, but I'm just not sure as many people will want to jump through some of the hoops that they have to go to some of these other schools.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of, we have no way of knowing how many people will jump through those hoops, but there are a couple of those groups, the high school students that aren't here. It's almost an automatic.
Yeah,
And the incoming kindergartners, and then I would say the incoming ninth graders. Those are the three groups of students that I think we will see the highest numbers in.
Yeah, the majority of the student totals that we showed you are students who we believe already attend those schools. They're already there.
So you're basically, they just get a scholarship to go where they've been going.
Sounds that way.
For 9 through 12, yes.
I did have a couple of comments if everybody else has finished. I noticed that the freshman school is not listed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So incoming ninth graders, they still could apply and get this, even though we have a freshman building
Yes.
that they could come to that's not on the list?
That is correct. And when this list, when we were first notified, we thought, our freshman school was not on the list. But it was only a matter of days until we figured out that didn't matter, that it was all about 9 through 12. Like if a student's going to start ninth grade and the high school is on the list, then they're eligible as freshmen, the way we understand it. Correct.
Okay. So I have Mrs. Lane, when we get a check from the state of Ohio, who does it come from? What organization? Does it come from ODE, or does it come from some other? So ODE is actually the one that signs the check and sends it to us.
Well, they don't have checks anymore, but it's all
Okay,
electronic.
well, okay.
Yes.
So it's interesting that public schools are sort of being punished for our lowest performing test takers, say the least. And you have to take a test to get in many of these private schools. And so really the ones that would have a complaint that they're not getting a good education will never be able to attend and take advantage of these scholarships. It's only the children that are succeeding in our public schools that will have the opportunity to take advantage of what the state is trying to do to public education. And that there, I think, is where the issue is. It's not kids that are saying, wow, I can't get a good education in my public school, I can go to private school. That's not what's going to happen. It's families that are saying, well, my kid is getting a good education at Fairfield. However, boy, it would be great if they could go to Baden or St. X or Elder or LaSalle or one of those schools. And now they have an outlet to do that. Now, my father put 10 kids through Cincinnati private schools, St. X, Elder, LaSalle, Mother of Mercy, and he had to travel for a living. He was missing his family 2 weeks out of the month to put our kids through that school. And it wasn't because Cincinnati Public Schools wasn't good. He just wanted to make sure that we had a Catholic education, because he was went to school at St. George in Clifton, Roger Bacon, and he felt it was important for him to give that religious education to his children, and so he was willing to sacrifice for that. But now, and I mentioned this to him the other day, and at first I thought he was going to say, well, God, I wish that would have been around when you kids were in school. But actually, he said a lot what Mr. Smith said, that this is an attack on public education. And now this is, he wasn't sure how the whole separation of church and state would play into this. And he was kind of questioning all the taxpayers that may in the future find themselves facing a new school levy because their tax dollars are going to go fund private education. So I think those are great questions for our educators. They're really not for our leadership team. Our Congress people in the state, Sarah Carruthers, George Lang, Senator Coley, I think all of them deserve to hear from us as a board and as our public, as our teachers. Hopefully we'll rally around this attack on their livelihood as well. I mean, as more and more students move away and funding goes away, we may need fewer teachers. So I hope they get behind this. I hope parents get behind this. And we definitely need to do something, and we need to do it in a quick manner. And part of it is understanding what the heck they're trying to do, because they may not even know. So I think it's important that we do that. So I would ask Mr. Smith and Mrs. Lane, and also Mrs. Ogg and Mr. Martin as well, that if there's something that you need from the board, please reach out to us. If we need to go up to Columbus and meet with legislators and meet with leaders at ODE or meet with leaders in the education committees of the State House, please let us know so that we can do that. Because this is an incredibly important matter at hand right now, because this is an immediate threat to public education in the whole state of Ohio. And again, this is not going to help the lower performing students. This is going to be taking money away from them to help us educate them better. And so the state may have had great intentions in this, but they're truly hurting the effort to include every child to get a free and fair public education. So please let us know what we could do.
We'll be happy to do that. You mentioned a few things I'd just like to follow up on. One, you talked about communicating in a timely manner, engaging stakeholders, and we certainly plan to do that. We feel like there will be some short-term damage to us, to the district for sure, but our goal is that'd be great if we could get things changed immediately or very quickly, but if not, to minimize the long-term damage. That's certainly one of our goals. You mentioned possible lawsuits. I'd be shocked if there aren't lawsuits because of the private money's going to public money's going to private institutions. And I do want to be very clear. I want to make a point to say, while we as a public school district feel like we are under attack, this presentation tonight is certainly not an attack on private schools. I want to be clear with anyone that's watching at home. Again, it's about educating our public, our staff, and our community about what's taking place. You also mentioned school levies. You and I were at a meeting in Columbus where we had school districts who had just passed a levy, and then this comes out, and they think they're going to be back on the ballot in 2 years because they were just caught off guard, totally shocked. So it's a really sad story. The impacts will be extreme across the state. So like I said, our goal is to work together with all stakeholders to try and get this turned around, get it moving in the other direction.
And I agree with you. This is not an attack on private schools because they do a great job of what they do. And I'm a product of a private school, and my whole family has been. And I know Mrs. Gundrum was a product of our private school. And so again, this is not an attack on private schools. They do a great job, and families, they have to make those choices, and they're tough choices sometimes. But at the same time, you shouldn't punish the public school for criteria that is not demanded from our private schools.
Exactly.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Our third presentation is a follow-up to our FCSD survey results. At this time, I'll turn it over to Gina Gentry Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Smith and members of the board. It's kind of hard to follow the sad, stressful news. What do I need to do? Oh. Maybe I'll tell you guys a few jokes to make you smile. We're there. There we go. All right. October 11th through the 18th, we conducted a community, and parent survey. We posted the link to the survey on our website. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that yet. On our website, through our parent email announcements, on social media, which is our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. There was an article in the Journal News about it, and I believe there was something in the Enquirer as well. We also had paper copies available upon request, and as far as I know, we did not receive any requests for paper. 842 people responded. One of the questions that we asked was about, we wanted to find out the demographics of the people who were responding to the survey. And in the written portion of the survey, we had several parents ask why this was a relevant question. Why did we ask this question? Well, one of the reasons we asked is because we wanted to see, how diverse our community is and what diversity in the community participated in the survey. And this is part of our diversity planning to engage our community, to get more people with diverse backgrounds to be engaged in things that we're doing in the community and in the school district. So that was one of the reasons why we wanted to make sure that we were able to look and see how many people from diverse backgrounds had participated. Interestingly, we found that 64.13% of participants were between the ages of 35 and 50. 77.25%, or 455 respondents, were female. 12.9%, or 76 respondents, were male. And 9.8%, or 58, decided they didn't want to respond. So, interestingly as well, the highest number in the demographics was 78%, almost 79% were white. And if you look through the survey, you'll find also that about 77% of the people who responded to the survey had kids in the high school. So I don't know if there's any correlation with that, but that just kind of struck me. So that was the highest number. And then our Hispanic population, we had 2%, a little over 2%. African American, about 6%, or 33 people. And we had Asian, about 1%. And also with American Indian, it was also 1%. So those are some things that, if you look through the written responses to find out why people didn't respond from certain groups, there's some interesting reasons why they decided not to do it. They didn't feel that race should be a part of the questions that we were asking. They didn't think it was relevant, that sort of thing. So we're still going through some of the responses to determine what our next steps are going to be. Good news is that the overall satisfaction, we've got about 83% of people who responded to the survey are pleased with the work that we're doing. So that's good news. And there's a quote on the slide, sorry about that, from one of our people that took the time to write a response. They said, "I am so proud of this district's integrity and consistent desire to put the children first. The medical facility, commitment to mental health issues, increased officers in the school, and diversity programs are just a few reasons why I feel so proud of our public school community." So that's should be a shot in the arm for given all of this bad news that we've been getting about EdChoice. So there are still people who believe in what we're doing and the work that we're doing. We looked at what schools the respondents attended. You can see there, the high school, 34% had high school students, 14% had freshman school students. Crossroads and Creekside were ranked number 2 and 3 in terms of the number of parents that participated. Nearly 35% of respondents have one kid. I think I've gone a little ahead. There we go. 35% of respondents have one child in Fairfield City Schools. 32% of respondents have 2 children in Fairfield schools. 10% have 3 children in Fairfield schools. And 19% of respondents did not have children in the schools. So that was kind of telling as well. This is a little bit difficult to see. I don't know, you can probably see it better on the sheet that was in your folders. But it's just a ranking of our staff, looking at teachers, administrators, office staff, transportation staff, and support staff. And it appears that the teachers, that a majority of the teachers received good or excellent. Administrators, good or excellent. Then office staff, good or excellent. So those numbers are high. Transportation, the same. And then support staff is pretty close there too. So those good and excellence are means that we're in that great level of satisfaction for parents and community members. 37% of respondents said that parent email announcements was their number one source for information. That was pretty surprising to me because I'm the website person, so I always assume that that's the first place people are going to go. So that was telling to me, and that was something that, maybe we can do some more with our parent email announcements to make them a little more appealing when they come across your emails. So that was the number one source. And then the Facebook page. That was about 20, quarter of the respondents rely on Facebook for that information. And then this made me feel good. 56.3% of respondents agree that Fairfield City Schools communicates important information in a timely and effective manner. While 7.74 either somewhat disagree or disagree. So that kind of made me feel good as the communication work that we do in the district. Social media use was pretty high. Facebook, no surprise there. Interestingly, 15% of respondents use no social media. So it was kind of interesting to see. And these are just some comments from the community. I'm not going to read those to you, but you can read them later in your packet. 87.6% of respondents said they were satisfied with the opportunities that they, as parents or community members, have to get involved in our schools. Nearly 26% are somewhat satisfied, while 5.64% weren't satisfied. And then, as you can see, 6.38% weren't sure. I hit that too quick. Curriculum. This should make you feel good, Mandy. So we have about 63%, 65% of the respondents are extremely satisfied or very satisfied with the curriculum programs that we offer to students in the community. That's good. That's a good sign. 60.94% of respondents say that the curriculum is helping students meet their maximum potential. 16% say the program exceeds expectations, and then 13% say it falls below expectations, and 7.9% or 7.09% say the curriculum needs some improvement. And through those comments, those people who are not satisfied, we will go through their written comments to determine what it is that they're not satisfied about, and then we can kind of work with those departments to figure out ways that we can make some improvements. And then there's a comment there from a very positive comment from a parent that says that the continued additions of AP and college credit courses on campus are wonderful for students that want to stay competitive with their peers at the next level of education. So that was good to hear. We have more than half of our respondents agree that our treasurer's office is fiscally responsible with the district money. So that's a good sign. We had 9.86% people who disagreed and 5.5%, little over 5.5%, who strongly disagreed. And then there were 22% of people who didn't know don't know, have no knowledge about finances and how school finance works. We asked our respondents to rate our facilities, classrooms, technology, gymnasiums, food service, and cleanliness of our buildings and classrooms. And as you can see, if you look under the good and excellent categories, the majority of respondents feel that those categories are well taken care of. So that's good to hear. Now, I did get some takeaways from the ratings, the written comments from the respondents. And the recurring themes were that we definitely need new schools for Crossroads, Creekside Middle, and North and South elementaries. So, Joe, are you listening? Respondents were pleased with the freshman school, Compass, and Central Elementary schools. Of course, they're the newest buildings in the district. There were mixed reactions about food that was served in the cafeterias. Some loved it. They liked the new offerings. They were very positive about that. And then some said their kid just doesn't like to buy lunch, they like to pack. So it wasn't a criticism for or against. Cleanliness of the buildings, they said it varies depending on the building, and it may just be due to the age of the building. So you can't compare a Central Elementary School with, say, a West Elementary in terms of how clean a building looks. All respondents seemed to be satisfied with our gym facilities. They didn't really have any verbal complaints about it. Technology, one of the things we did find is that they felt that technology was behind other school districts. But again, this survey was conducted prior to the announcement about the district's move to one-to-one technology. So I'm sure that if we were to ask that question again, they'd be very excited about that. And the majority of respondents were also satisfied with the way the classrooms looked. So. One of the things that we focused a lot of our attention on is whether or not our students have a trusted individual that they can go to if they have a problem, whether it's personal or at school. And we found that more than 89% of the respondents agree or strongly agree that their child has a teacher, counselor, or other staff member that they can go to for help. That's really nice to hear. And I was very interested in this one. This is the awareness about the school-based health center. Nearly 78% of respondents said they do not use the health center. And when I looked through the written comments about this and why they didn't use it, a lot of them it's because they have really good insurance, they have a doctor already, they have easy access to medical care. And then there are some, that 12.95% said that they do not know about the health center. So those are some good comments there that will lead us to do some more promotions of the health center. One of the questions we asked was, my child feels safe at school, or for them to respond to. So we had 37.54 say that they strongly agreed that their child felt safe at school. 46.89% said that they somewhat agreed. So that's a pretty high number. And then 12.11% and 3.11% either strongly, somewhat disagreed or strongly disagreed. And then mental health, again, we have 75% of respondents that are pleased with what we're doing with mental health. So that's always a good thing. We just want to hear that. And then we touched on special services. We did ask a couple of questions for special services, and we had 600 individuals responded to this question, and 80 out of those 600 had children with special needs. So we found that 82.7% of those respondents, or 67 respondents, agree that they feel that they're an equal partner in planning their child's program. And then 14, almost 15%, disagreed with that. And then 81.25% of individuals agreed that the district does show sensitivity toward families of children with special needs. When we talk about transportation, I hear from a lot of families about busing and why don't we have busing at the high school? Why don't we bus juniors and seniors, that sort of thing. So I was interested to see what the responses would be to some of these questions. Parents do like our transportation service. 61.9% either strongly agree or somewhat agree that their child's bus is timely with pickup. 9.23% either strongly disagree or somewhat disagree about this. .11%, sorry about that, of respondents are satisfied with their child's transportation experience. So that's more than half, so that's great. And then the written feedback, some of the overlying themes from the written feedback was, please reinstate high school busing for juniors and seniors, eliminate double routes. Many drivers are courteous and kind to the riders, and they did appreciate that. And one thing that they would really like us to do is notify parents when buses are running late. And then you can see the chart where they agree that their child is safe on the bus. 22.38% and 36.23% either strongly agree or somewhat agree that their child is safe on the bus. So that's good to hear as well. So our next steps will be to continue to review the written comments. I have like 97 pages of written comments that I'm still poring over, and to just kind of share those results with administrators, our staff members, and community members. And then review the current methods that we're using now to determine how we can improve. There's always room for improvement, and this has been a great experience in terms of finding out the things that we need to do better, and the things that we're doing great with now. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions, comments from the board?
Well, I certainly appreciate your efforts on this, Gina. I think it's a great thing, and I think you alluded to some things right off the bat that you picked up on and learned in regards to social media and how we can address those needs. I'm disappointed that nearly 13% of the respondents didn't know that we had a health center.
Yeah.
And we've pushed hard on that, so I don't feel like we've not done a good job of communicating that, but it certainly speaks to the fact that we need to continue to do it.
Yeah.
Could be people from the community that took that, not just.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I would like to add, it said, was it 78% said that they haven't used it. However, we still give monthly updates. We just got one this week that our numbers continue to grow, and we're seeing some of our best numbers in terms of students served at the health center. So that's really good news. And so we're still working that. And like I said, we give those updates at administrative meetings, so that's good news.
And I think that's something, too, that we can probably share with our community, just so that they see, this center will take people regardless of their insurance. You could have the best insurance, and you might not be able to get in to see your doctor, but you certainly could go to the health center and be seen there. So,
Thank you so much for putting all this information together.
Well, thank you.
I did happen to notice that the percentage of people who either somewhat disagreed or strongly disagreed about safety in the school and on the bus was pretty close. So going forward, I would be interested in knowing whether it's the same people that feel unsafe at school also feel unsafe on the bus, or if they had sort of similar comments, so we can figure out if there's a common denominator somewhere, or if it's more or less just, I wouldn't feel safe anywhere right now with all the bad news that you hear all the time. So going forward, I would be interested in learning more about that, but I really appreciate your effort in putting all this together. That was a lot of information. I took the survey. That was a lot of information to go through, so.
Thank you. That is a curious point, though. I do wonder if there's a way that we can find out how, how closely related these two questions are. And Mr. Jeffers is in the back who helped me put this survey together, so I'll be talking with you tomorrow.
Anybody else?
Great job, Gina.
I do have a couple things I found interesting. First of all, 38.5% of the respondents have kids in an elementary school. So it's elementary and high school, 38%, 34%. So, because our elementaries obviously are divided up. And I wouldn't feel bad about people not getting their information from the website, because they get emails pushed to them every day, and Facebook is pushed to them, and they have to go seek the website. So it's apples and oranges. So don't take offense to them not getting the information. Information they get from the email may make them go to the website for more information. So I thought it was interesting that of the people that said they didn't know about the finances or the total number of people looking at it, 22% said they didn't know about the finances, but 213 of the respondents didn't even respond to that question.
Yeah,
So it could be they know, but
they just said,
they didn't want to admit they don't know,
or they skipped it.
or they just skipped
altogether.
it. So it's
Yeah.
interesting. That's almost, 20% of
Yeah.
the survey just skipped that question.
And that's one of the risks you run when you have such a long survey. I mean, this had 37 questions. And when we talked with Paul Fallon, the survey guru, he did say that would happen, that we would probably see people skipping questions. So, yeah, but to not be surprised.
Right. And on the transportation, 162 people said it wasn't applicable that their kids ride the bus, and only 151 said it wasn't applicable as far as if they're safe or not. So
Right.
even there, not as many people answered that
Yeah.
same. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
But this is great. I look forward to hearing more about the comments people made, and good or bad, because we need to know.
We need to know, yeah.
And what we could do. I think this is a great start, and one of the questions I had when we started this was, what were we going to do with the information? I think you've answered that tonight, so thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Appreciate your support.
Any other questions or comments? Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.